Hello and welcome to SRIRAM's IAS. Today in this lecture, we will be continuing our series, and in the last lecture we concluded till this slide in which we revised a little bit revision about all the concepts and we concluded all the concepts. Today what we will be going through is a bit more detail into the concepts, but before we start that, I just want to highlight and recite it to you that there is a story long back when Christopher Columbus arrived in Americas, and when Alexander actually happened to America, happened to Europe. The Great conquered, Alexander the Great, when he conquered Persia, and similarly when Columbus arrived in America. What happens, or what happened back then was that all the gold which was there in America was spent from and was sent from the New World, that is the American world, to Europe. Similarly, from Persia, all the treasure houses of Persian Empire were spent by Alexander in Europe. Now what happens with this is that gold actually was more in supply. That at that time was the currency of that time. But what happened was it actually decreased the prices. Why? Because gold was too much in supply. And now, when gold was too much in supply, what would happen to the prices? Everyone can buy, everyone has the power to buy, everyone has the purchasing power, which means that too many hands now chasing too few goods, because supply is not increasing, gold has increased. Now, this led the economists of that time to think that if there is inflation, or if the prices actually doubled, I guess I said that prices decreased, prices will increase obviously. Prices actually doubled, both cases, that when the Columbus took the gold from America and spent it in Europe. Similarly, the gold from Persia, when it was spent in Europe by Alexander the Great, it actually increased the supply of money, it actually increased the supply of gold, which led to what? Which led to increase in the prices of commodities. Now, once we understand this, we thought, or the economists of that time thought, that what would it take that if such condition never happened, or if we say that there is a moderate inflation, what and how will it happen, that in how many years will the prices double otherwise? If there was no such influx of gold, if there was no such influx of currency, if there was no such influx of money supply, which RBI does today, or which any other source or government by printing more money does, what will it take, how many years will it take to see how the prices will double? In how many years will the prices double? So there was a rule, or the thumb rule, that is, which today also exists. The rate of inflation, what we do is, rate of inflation, at that time it was 0.7%, and 72 divided by rate of inflation, that is 0.7, and this will give you the number, or the number of years in which the prices will double. Say for example, if we currently have a rate of, or an inflation rate of 2%, which the target of RBI is under the inflation targeting management system, RBI has to manage the inflation, or RBI has to keep the inflation at 2% to 6%. If we manage if we manage to keep the inflation at 2% rate, it means 72 divided by 2, which means around 36 years. It will take 36 years to get the prices doubled, or around 35 years. So thereby you should understand that economics is not something, or what we are currently dealing with is not something which is new to the field, or it will take around 35 to 36 years. It is not something new to the humanity. It has been there since ages, and since the time of currency, since humans started to trade, since humans moved away, or since humans were in barter system. When they were exchanging in barter, economy still existed. Economy existed when humans never used to trade even inside the families, because it is the management of or household management. Oikos and nomos is household management. So with this story, I would just try to freshen you up. I thought to try freshen you up that economics is something more interesting than what we actually think. Moving to our lecture again, this series or in this lectures, we completed till GDP and GNP. Now let's just revise some of the more important concepts and what all did we read till now, so that we wind up all the national income accounting chapter. Now remind yourselves that we are calculating GDP, gross domestic product, and this GDP is actually, or GNP, it is the total summation of all or the final value of all the goods and services which we produced in an economy for an entire year. Now this number, suppose it is 100. If divided by population, that is the 10 persons who are living in the country, they are producing total 100 rupees of GDP. It means our per capita income is rupees 10 as per GDP or as per the numbers or statistics, because that is how we calculate it, the average. And that is what per capita income says. Per capita income is basically what? The average income earned per person in a given area during a specific time period. We need to remember it as it is. Calculation, total income divided by the total population. Currently we have a per capita income of 2.4 lakh rupees per person. Understood? But ask yourselves that do you actually have that income or not? Or in your noon, how many people actually receive this income? 2.4 lakh rupees per year. Understood? And if it is not the case, sorry, if it is not the case that everyone is not receiving or earning this much income, then why do we use this? It is an average and does not reflect wealth distribution. High per capita income doesn't mean that everyone is wealthy. The significant income inequality may exist, and that means it is not necessarily that everyone is actually earning this much amount. Maybe some of the people might not be earning that much. Now, why to discuss this concept of per capita income? Because this shows us that how much nation's wealth is there and how much contribution should have been to everyone. But this also shows us that how much inequality is there, and it is a number which talks about that a rough or an average of income produced by everyone. So UPSC also asked a question on similar tone, that high per capita income, does it actually mean, or high per capita income, does it actually mean or translate into the development? Or does GDP growth actually translate into the development of people? Or does it necessarily, the term which was used was necessarily, does it necessarily translate into what? The development of people. So that was about real this per capita income. Nominal per capita income is generally defined or derived by dividing the GDP at market price by population, but real per capita income is at GDP at purchasing power parity, and then it is divided by this. Understood? So real per capita income as per the prices of the purchasing power parity. Now that is one thing which we will be dealing later on. Next thing which is important is, let's revise all the concepts. National income, which we read till now, is actually what? It is the monetary value of all the final goods and services by all the normal residents of the country in an accounting year. So thereby national income is equal to net national product at factor cost. Remember this, net national product at factor cost. One more thing which you need to remember, who are these normal residents? These are those people who are ordinarily residing in a country. Those people who are residing in a country for 1 or more year and their economic interest or center of their economic interest lies in the country. What does that mean? All their economic decisions are taken in that country. For the matter that their profit is booked in that country, which we earlier read as Ireland's example. All the MNCs, they book their profit in Ireland, which shows that their GDP or their production is in Ireland. But it is not actually in Ireland, it is all around the world. Next important thing is institutions. We will refer to it, that how GDP is calculated, what all institutions are there which are involved in calculation and all. We will refer to it later on. One more important thing, factors of production, which we read earlier. 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital and entrepreneurship. These 4 factors, they produce rent, they produce wages, profit, interest and profit. Now, all of these are known as factor payments or factor income. Understood? So, factor cost is what? The cost included or incurred on these all factors of production. This factor cost shows us that actual how much cost is involved in production of a good. Say this mouse has been produced only of 200 rupees, which was the factor cost of this mouse. But then again we added what? Indirect taxes. What is indirect tax? Similarly, or indirect tax, for example GST, or we decreased subsidies, like if the government or if the net price of this after taxes, if the net price of this mouse was 250 rupees, government gave a subsidy of 25 rupees, so that everyone should have this mouse and access computers. Government provided a subsidy of 25 rupees, so that is why its market price will be now 225 rupees. Understood? Sure. Let's move ahead. That was all about the factor cost and market price. Therefore, market price equals to factor cost plus production tax and production subsidy. These two concepts have not been dealt yet. What are production taxes and what are production subsidies? These are production tax. For example, if a person is setting up a factory, there are 2 factories. One factory produces pens, another factory produces guns. Simple. Now, this factory or the pen factory has to be given incentives so that it should produce more. As you remember, the discussion which we earlier held about the incentives in economy, that how behavioral theory, Richard Thaler, how behavioral theory actually works, how behavioral economics actually works, how the nudge theory actually works. Once we discuss this, we need to understand that these pens should be promoted, the factory of pens should be promoted so that all should produce pens. If the pens are accessible, if they are affordable, everyone will use it, education will spread. That is why we will give them incentives. However, the factory of guns or the factory of maybe not guns, cigarettes. If the factory of cigarettes is there, we all know that it will destroy the health of population. If it is destroying the health of population, it means it should be what? It should be disincentivized. Thereby, we will impose what? More taxes on this. Now, there will be a lump sum amount. In terms of fees, for example, license fees, that will be asked from the tobacco industry or the cigarette industry. They will be asked to pay, for example, 10 lakh, 20 lakh, 1 crore rupees as a license fee to start a tobacco industry or to start an alcohol industry or a beverage. Now, once they pay this tax, or this tax is paid only to start that enterprise, not to produce goods, that is production tax. If the person is producing urea and we know that urea is needed by farmers, so that person will be subsidized with production subsidy. That if you set up a factory for urea production, if you set up a warehouse or a cold chain for farmers so that they can store their food and it will help the nation in ensuring food security, then that person will be provided production subsidy. This production subsidy will be a lump sum amount. For example, there is a 65% subsidy, 65% subsidy on establishing cold chains. Understood? So that is why market price equals to factor cost plus production tax minus production subsidies. Understood? Basic price equals to market price minus production tax and production subsidies. Understood? Product tax and product subsidies. Understood? Chalo. Now the next part, that is transfer payments, we already discussed about it. Depreciation. Now what is depreciation? Depreciation is basically depreciation is something which is more important to understand. Depreciation talks about one of the key aspects. For example, if I have a factory of producing mouse, understood? If this mouse is to be produced in a machine, I have brought this machine and this machine was worth rupees 10 lakh. Now I am producing the mouse for every year. In the first year, I incurred a cost of 10 lakh rupees. Now, is this the cost which I have to recover from that year only? Or is it the cost or the capital investment which I did in the machinery, is it for 1 year only, or it is for entire 10 years, or it is for 20 years? Now, in order to understand that after every year, I have to account for all my assets. This machine is also one of the assets which I have. But the value of that machine is now decreased. Why? Its productivity is same, it is producing the same number of mouses. But because of accounting terminology, because of the methodology of accounting, I have to decrease the value because this machine no longer has a value of 10 lakh rupees. If its value is decreased, say for example, last year it was worth 10 lakh rupees, this year it is worth 9 lakh 50,000 rupees. Understood? That is depreciation. So it is simply, I would say, a set, or I would say a number, or we can say a fixed percentage of wear and tear which happens to fixed assets, and we decrease it from our net value of assets only because the wear and tear which has happened across the usage of this product. It is usually associated to buildings, machinery, all the fixed capital which we have. Only because of the accounting terminology, rest the assets are okay. But tell me one thing, there will be a time after 2 years, 10 years or 20 years when this machine will be done away with. Now we had a machine of 10 lakh rupees. We accounted it for 10 lakh rupees. We kept it, this machine is 10 lakh rupees, and we kept it in our balance sheet for entire 10 years or 20 years. After 20 years, now we know that this machine is worth zero because it is not producing anything. Now tell me, at that point of time, what will we do? There will be a loss of 10 lakh rupees at a time. And there was a purchase of 10 lakh rupees 20 years back. Instead of doing that, what we do is we decrease the value continuously over 20 years, and at the 20th year, maybe when the machine is done away, when the machine is dead, when the machine is not working, its value might have been reduced to 2 lakh rupees, and the business will show a loss of 2 lakh rupees, which will be comparatively have a lesser impact on the business. That is one thing. One more important aspect, that sir, if the machine was of 10 lakh rupees, what if the machine gets I would say damaged while production in the midway? What if we have to do repair and maintenance of that machine? Is that repair and maintenance also capitalized? No, it is not. Understood? If it is technological upgradation, then it is capitalized. Then it will be calculated as fixed asset. However, if it is repair and maintenance, it will be calculated as working capital, or it will be not working capital, it is actually calculated as expenditure. But one more thing, why am I saying this? Because UPSC asked a question in 24. Question was about the differentiation between fixed capital and working capital. Understood? And that differentiation is given in 9th class NCERT, chapter 1, story of Palampur, page number 2. you will see it is mentioning about the physical capital, and in physical capital it mentions about the fixed capital and working capital. Fixed capital, it gives you the examples of the plow used by farmer, example of computer used by, or I would say this computer or this computer in which you are reading, or the mobile device which you are reading on. Second, it gives you the example of yarn used by the weaver to I would say weave the cloths or sweaters. It gives you the example of petrol used by car. What are these examples? Tell me in the comment section. Are they fixed assets all, or are they working capital? That is what was asked by UPSC, and you should also know it. Tell me in the comment section that what it is actually. Understood? Now, next, one more thing. Gross versus net. This is also discussed, that in order to derive from gross versus net. Gross was that we had a machine of 10 lakh rupees. That was gross. Now, what is net? Because we use that machine for 1 year, its wear and tear damage has caused, and that is why its net worth today is just 9,50,000 rupees. That is why we decrease depreciation. Understood? So, gross domestic product and net domestic product, GDP or minus depreciation equals to net domestic product. Understood? Similarly, net national product, NNP, equals to GNP minus depreciation. Understood? One more thing, domestic versus national. National is something which includes net factor income from abroad. Domestic is something which does not include net factor income from abroad. So, thereby GNP equals to GDP plus net factor income from abroad, and NNP, that is net national product, equals to NDP, that is net domestic product. This is net domestic product, not net national product. Okay, it is, sorry, net national product, NDP plus net factor income from abroad, because NDP already has the factor of net, that is depreciation has already been removed, and now we have to add just net factor income from abroad. Understood? One more thing which you need to remember is per capita income, already discussed, that is nominal per capita income. Second, GDP at market price, the monetary value of all the final goods. It talks about the borders. What are the borders? Borders of a country, the territorial or political borders of the country. Time period, usually 1 year. It is the production by citizens and foreigners both, or foreign MNCs, if those are working inside India or in the territory of India. Second-hand goods are not included in GDP because they already have been calculated. One more thing, GDP at factor cost. What is GDP at factor cost? It talks about the aggregate income from all the factors of production. Understood? Which we discussed earlier. It excludes the indirect taxes. It excludes indirect taxes. It includes subsidies. Why am I using these words, excludes and includes? Because it will help you to remember and directly strike the statements in exam. UPSC usually uses these terms, that is why, because they will not otherwise say GDP plus minus, they will use include and exclude. Lastly, GDP at factor cost equals to GDP at market price minus net indirect taxes. Net indirect taxes equals to indirect taxes minus subsidies. Understood? Clear? Now, lastly, what is GDP deflator? GDP deflator again is nominal GDP divided by real GDP into 100. Nominal GDP is at current prices and real GDP is at constant prices. Clear? Now, the methods of GDP calculation already discussed. We have 3 methods of calculation of GDP, that is expenditure method, income method and production method. Under the expenditure method, what we do is C plus G plus I plus X minus M. Understood? That is net exports. Under the income method, we calculate or sum up, that is the summation of all the incomes, whether that was rent plus wages plus interest plus profit, all which has been earned by every factor of production. All the factor incomes are added into the income method. Understood? Clear? Lastly, production method. What is production method? Production method has simple formula, that is the final goods or the final value of all the goods minus intermediate goods. Understood? What are intermediate goods? Those goods which are used in the process of production as inputs for final goods. For example, there is a very simple example given in NCERTs. It talks about the tea leaves. If the tea leaves are purchased by a household and consumed at home, they are final goods. If those tea leaves are purchased and by a tea stall vendor, now he will do? He will add milk, sugar, and then cook it, add water, cook it for, I guess, boil it for 10-20 minutes, and then he will serve tea as his final good. Tea leaves are intermediate goods. Understood? That is simple. Lastly, or I would say rather, this mouse, if purchased by a person, like you, it means that it is a final good. But if this mouse is purchased by us as a company, it is an intermediate good. Understood? Next, income method already discussed, production method and expenditure method. All of it has been discussed already. There is nothing to discuss. National income. Okay, last thing which we need to understand, that too very properly, and I need your full attention into this. It is about the circular flow of economy. Now, before we go into circular flow of economy, I would just try to elucidate it a bit more so that you remember it properly. Now, understand. See, in an economy, everyone is acting. Everyone is acting like, I will tell you very simply. I need a slide which is, now hereby I will be explaining you a little bit of concept, and you will remember it for your life. Say, there happened to be an era in which there was no one at all. There were two people only, A and B. Now what A and B did, they started to trade with each other. For example, A gave me tomatoes and I gave him potatoes, and we exchanged it. It was a trade. Then again, A thought that why shouldn't I do one thing? Why shouldn't I establish a firm? Why shouldn't I establish a firm? An agricultural farm or an agricultural firm which will procure all the tomatoes of all the farmers, and then we will sell all the tomatoes in market. Simple. So it was a good. Now firms will sell these goods to households, like what is being done by different apps, Big Bazaar, Big Basket, or what all other apps are doing. These firms will sell goods and services to all the households. Now these households are going to pay them with money. Simple transaction. Now remember one more thing. What happens over here is, with the firms and these households, what happens is, firms will send goods and households will send or pay them back in money. These households will also provide them labor. The extra labor in the house will be sent to the firms only to work over there, and this firm will pay back in salary. Simple concept, very simple. Now, if there was one firm and one household, it was understood. If there were 10 firms and 10 households, it was understood. But it turned out into a state, a larger state, in which everyone is there. Everyone means government is there, government institutions are there, markets are there, and now kings and queens, they are ruling over the markets. They are deciding which good should be sold or at what price. Like the Alauddin Khilji, he established a system of markets in which every good was with a fixed price. like I told you about Alexander, like I told you about Columbus. Everyone or every person included or transacted with the market, and this state also happened. I told you about the Germany, the inflation in Germany, the inflation in Brazil, Yugoslavia. So all of this and state came into picture, or the rulers or the kingdoms came into picture, and these kingdoms started to impose what? Governments. They started to impose taxes on both households and firms. They started to give away subsidies. The example of pens and guns, do you remember? I gave you the example of pens and guns, that if pens need to be incentivized, so we will provide subsidies for the production of pens. If guns need to be disincentivized, so we will impose a tax on guns. If firms are earning more profit, we will impose what? Tax on them. Give that extra income to us, 30%, 25% of profit. Give that to us, pay taxes, then only we will provide you all the facilities of the market. Understood? Second most important thing, that these households and firms, taxes and subsidies. Lastly, one more thing which we need to remember is, second most important thing, now with the government came into picture, and these firms and these households thought of a mechanism that what we should do is, households thought that the labor which is earning extra income, we will save it. We will save it, and we will save it with the financial institutions. We will save it with the financial institutions. Firms, on the other hand, thought if the income is with the financial institutions, if there is money lying with the financial institutions, all the savings of households are with financial institutions, so we should take loans from financial institutions, because we need to expand, we need to invest more in our business, so we will take this loan, pay them interest back, and utilize that money so that we produce more and we earn more because of the profit which they want. One more important thing, the need of firms and households was not met by the domestic economy. That is why they started to trade internationally, they started to produce internationally. Thereby, they started to export and import. But remember one more thing, that this export and import, when we export, we bring in money into the domestic economy. Understood? And when we import, we actually, I would say, sell away, or I would say send away the money from domestic economy into the foreign economy when we import. Thereby, understand this, all the taxes, all the savings and all the imports, they are actually what? They are leakages. They are leakages from this first unit, that is firms and households. This was the first basic unit which we had. So all the transactions which used to happen between firms and households, now the money is getting leaked or injected either from government or financial institutions or any other person or any other sector, or exports, imports. It is either getting injected into this or getting away from it. It is entering into the circle, or it is taking or going away from the circle. That is why all the taxes, savings and imports, they are actually leakages, and all the subsidies, loans or investments, or exports, these are injections into the economy. Now, if you understand the role of all of these factors of, because you might not be able to find it on the book, so that is why I am discussing it over here. If you understand all of it, if you understand the circular flow of money, we will discuss it later once more. circular flow of income, if you understand it properly, if you understand all the aspects of it, then only you will see that what is happening in current day economics. Then only you will see that what is important for current day economics. Understood? Till now, if there is any confusion, you can ask in comment section. I will take it tomorrow and I will answer all your doubts tomorrow regarding this. One thing. Second thing which is important is about the picture, or I would say about the expenditure method. That why to utilize or why to use this formula C plus G plus I plus X minus M. Because right now you witnessed that how government, financial institutions, private sector, firms, they all invest into the economy. They all take money out of economy and invest into the economy. That is why all the expenditure, all the consumption which is being done in the economy has to be recorded in expenditure method. So in the expenditure method, what we do is we actually calculate all the spendings by consumers, all the savings by consumers, all the imports and exports which are done in the economy, income earned and government spendings and taxes. This all is calculated in the expenditure method. One thing. Second most important thing which you need to remember is about this. Very simple diagram. Very simple diagram. What government does is it imposes taxes on businesses, it gives subsidies to businesses, imposes taxes on households, it gives subsidies to these households. Government also starts procuring from market. It either procures from market or sells to market. Like government purchases all the wheat, rice and other 22 crops from farmers, and it purchases it all, stores into FCI godowns and then sells it back into the market through public stock holdings and public stock holdings sale. One thing. Second, because government is interacting into the market, which we earlier had only firms and households. Now remember one more thing, that these businesses, they transact with market, they transact with households, they sell the products, households purchase the products, households pay the salaries, households pay the money, households either earn income from the market by selling away land, labor, capital and entrepreneurship. This all was simplified in the previous diagram. So that is how the circular flow of economy happens, and that is how we should understand that this whole economy is integrated into one. Understood? Now, lastly, remember this diagram and keep it as it is. Keep it as it is. If we calculate and add up all the factors, because this will help you to solve all the questions in the exam. If we calculate all the factors like consumption expenditure, government purchases, net exports and gross private investment and net factor income from abroad, it will give us gross national product at market price. If we add up consumption expenditure, government purchases, net exports and gross private investment, removing the net factor income from abroad, it means net factor income from abroad is removed, so it will be domestic product. It will not be national product. Gross national product, domestic product. No net factor income over here. Clear? Now, after GDP, if you decrease depreciation from the GDP, then you will get net domestic product. Understood? Net domestic product. Gross, net. And in order to derive at net domestic product but at factor cost, you need to remove net indirect taxes. Understood? That is it, and we are done. Understood? Clear with this? Lastly, keep these formulas at your hand. It will help you to revise all the things. GVA at basic price is GVA at market price minus net product taxes. Clear? Now, in the next lecture, we will be going through all the limitations of GDP, because we are out of time today. Limitations of GDP and what all recommendations were there by Surjit Bhalla committee. What is the mechanism, what all institutions we have, what is splicing and other things, economic sectors, because last year 2024 we witnessed and had a question on these three: primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector. And we will also witness current statistics of Indian economy, that how Indian economy is actually, which sector is contributing how much, primary sector, construction sector, industry. And lastly, we will conclude this chapter and we will be done with this. With this, I thank you all for being here, and I would suggest that all of you should be commenting more and more. Then only we will be really interested to know that how much important these lectures are for you. That is how I will be putting more energy into it. Till then, for the next lecture, goodbye, Jai Hind.